Welcome back to UAP Rant, episode 13 in the podcast series now. For those that are following the series, in previous episodes we've been discussing historical characters that aren't really mentioned in the UAP disclosure movement in the public arena at the moment, and those are the likes of Otis Carr, Douglas Tour, Dr. Ning Lee, Victor Schauberger, and we've been looking a little bit at James Clerk Maxwell. And if you listen to the previous podcasts, we've been talking about how Maxwell's original quaternion equations seem to have something to do with how UAPs or UFOs might work, how scalar weapons technology works, and indeed interdimensional anomalies. And I mentioned how Maxwell knew Einstein quite well at the time, and in some earlier podcast series I talked about why we ended up calling the fourth dimension time, and the confusion that has ensued in terms of understanding space as space-time when it could have been just four-dimensional and electric if Maxwell's work had won out at the end of the day. So I just want to talk a little bit about the relationship between Einstein and Maxwell, because it's really interesting, and I think it says a lot about what happened back then in terms of who won out at the end of the day with Einstein's work, and how that came to be with and how Maxwell's equations carried forward the whole electromagnetic side of things alongside Einstein's theory of special relativity. So at the time, Einstein was fascinated by Maxwell's equations, and he started to see the world through a new lens, the lens of relativity. This happened when the two of them, Einstein and Maxwell, met at a conference about electromagnetic radiation. Now, Maxwell's work, of course, changed the world forever, and Albert Einstein said that back then as well, because he was referring to Maxwell's four great electromagnetic papers that came out at the time. And Einstein was asked, well, as a scientist, do you stand on Newton's shoulders? And Einstein even went to the extent of saying that no, in fact, that Einstein stood on the shoulders of Maxwell and his work. Now, Maxwell didn't get as much public recognition as Einstein, only because he died relatively young at 48 years old of cancer. So he didn't become like an elder of physics as a professor well into his older years or the height of his career, whereas Einstein did. So just the fact that he wasn't around for that extra 30 years meant he wasn't there to reinforce and back up his notions, especially with his quaternion equations in electromagnetic radiation. So he could have lived on for another 30 years and done all that. Now, because of course he combined electricity and magnetism into electromagnetism with these four equations to mathematically describe electromagnetic fields. Now, the field concept originally came from Faraday, of course, but it's Maxwell that worked it out quantitatively using mathematics. So that's why we've got the four equations that we see now. Now, the four equations that we see now were not Maxwell's original work. They are a far simpler modern notation that most people can easily understand. And this is my whole point. So although the mathematics of his four-space geometric potentials for his original work were a complex mathematics, they seem to go a long way. Well, I think they go a long way in describing a connection between what space really is and how it's negotiated or navigated by what we think of as anomalous phenomena, or UFOs, UAPs, or spacecraft. So there seems to be some link there, but of course it's less amenable to calculation and too complex, so it's passed out of public view. Now, by making Faraday's work more concrete in terms of describing fields mathematically, Maxwell initiated a revolution in physics understanding, because what happened was we now have the electromagnetic universe, and the only field in town was Maxwell's, and Maxwell's fields from his four equations. So electricity and magnetism were linked by it already, but the whole of nature came to be, or was to be, explained just by using Maxwell's field equations. So we went from the electromagnetic atom to length contraction, to introducing time dilation of orbiting charges, and Einstein explained them in far better ways, and eventually killed off the electromagnetic atom, because Einstein got into general relativity and the theory of special relativity, of course, and then the famous E equals mc squared equation, all about the speed of light being fixed. So I want to talk more about this and bring it back more to what that has to do with UAP and UFOs, and the research I've been doing on orbs and rods. So I'll leave it there for now, and we'll go more into the relationship between Maxwell and Einstein in the next episode. I think it's really important we follow this through to some sort of conclusion about what space really is. If Maxwell had carried on, we may well have had a different interpretation than what Einstein's decision was, is to call the fourth dimension time. So I'll leave it there for now, and we will talk again soon.